my name is Attorney Walter with Not the Third. I'm with Disability Resolution PA. Let's go right to this. We're going to be reading an article, Stimulus Checks Dramatically Reduced Hunger and Hardship. This is from CNBC. Production, let's see, Christina Wilkie, Thursday, June 3rd, 2021. Here we go. Key points. The two most recent rounds of stimulus checks caused food shortages and financial instability to fall by more than 40% each, according to a new analysis of Census Bureau data. That makes sense. You give people money, they're going to eat. This drop in households that reported financial hardships was sharpest in December and April, coinciding with the distribution of the stimulus checks. The popularity of the cash transfers is key for President Joe Biden and congressional Democrats who are relying on the success of the relief bill to bolster support for their broader domestic agenda. Okay, well, there's no need for that political paragraph there because it had nothing to do with the article other than to say CNBC supports Democrats. That's all that was. Washington. The two rounds of economic stimulus checks distributed over the past 6 months appear to have dramatically reduced financial hardships among American households, according to blah, blah, blah. Wait, so what do? You just repeat things in the bullet points? Oh, I guess you do. Between December and April, the Census Household Pulse Survey showed that the rate of food shortages fell by more than 40%. During that same period, financial instability dropped by 45% and anxiety and depression fell by 20%. Now, I did another thing on the whole anxiety and depression fell by 20% as to how they collect their metrics on that, and we now know that the way they collect information on that is ridiculously erroneous. It is completely short-sighted, and it is probably not acceptable in any actual form other than maybe presenting on like a CNBC. But it's just, you'll see the other video and you'll know what I mean. Their other arguments are that financial instability dropped by 45%. Yeah, that makes sense. If you're paying people to exist, financial instability is going to go away. Shortages fell by more than 40% for the rate of food. That's good. If you're giving people money, they have food. According to the Pulse data, the sharpest improvements in food security and financial stability occurred in the weeks immediately after two relief bills were signed into law and the IRS began sending economic impact payments to individual bank accounts. Makes sense. As a part of COVID-19 relief bill, the federal government distributed 600 to nearly every American adult, starting in December of last year. A second bill, the American Rescue Plan Act, was passed in March with another round of checks, this time for 1,400. So we had the 1,200, 600, and 1,400, although the 1,400 was actually supposed to be 2,000, but that's not what this video is about, but I'm still grumpy about that. Two groups in particular experienced the greatest overall decline in hardship over the first 4 months of this year: adults living with children and households making less than $25,000. Makes sense. If you don't have that much money coming in, the household will suffer. The study authors H. Luke Schaefer and Patrick Cooney of the University of Michigan's Poverty Solutions Initiative acknowledge that the economy improved over this time, likely helping to decrease overall hardship, but they argue that with unemployment still sitting above 6% in April, which is an incorrect number, it's way higher than that. The economic recovery alone is not enough to explain the dramatic increase in food security, financial stability, and mental health that coincided with the stimulus payments. Studies like this one are part of a growing body of research that suggests that direct cash transfers may have helped to insulate American families and the U.S. economy overall from the worst of the pandemic, which is starvation. The no-strings-attached payments have also proven extremely popular with voters, including with Republicans. A March survey found that 79% of all voters supported the 1,400 stimulus checks, 70% supported $300 per week enhanced federal unemployment benefit, and 69% supported an expanded child tax credit. Starting in July, the child tax credit will be distributed in the form of a monthly cash payment to families with children, $300 for each child under 6 years and $250 for each child 6 to 17 through the end of the year. These checks alone will lift an estimated 10 million Americans above, or 10 million American children above the poverty line or closer to it, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, so long as the parents spend it appropriately on the child and not basically on stuff from Amazon, unless it's stuff for the child. Critics say the payments distributed too much money to people who didn't really need it, and that they lacked any oversight of how the dollars were being spent. Well, actually, I think it's probably not enough money, to be honest, because if the whole point was to get Americans through a pandemic where the government and the corporate economy and the little companies and big companies were all shut down, I think realistically that's not that much money. It's to just get people through it. It's not long-term, it's not UBI, it's not continuous, it is just to get people through it. So in that regard, if we're saying, hey, starving poor people should have not as much, then yeah, that argument would make sense. If we're sitting here going, yeah, starving poor people shouldn't have as much, then yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Then we shouldn't give starving poor people as much money to get through a pandemic, because that makes sense. We're apparently happy as a group about that, about the low level of quality of money that they would receive being even lower. That would make apparently some politicians happy. The overall cost to taxpayers of the stimulus checks was around $391 billion, which is funny. Which is really funny, because yet these bills coming out are trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And how much of that is going overseas and how much of that is going to non-Americans? But given the popularity of the stimulus, and who's going to have to pay for all that down the line? It's Americans. Not those other countries. Not those non-Americans. It's Americans. But given the popularity of the stimulus payments and the growing evidence of their impact on the people's lives, it is little wonder that the White House is eager to draw attention to them. I would not be drawing attention to me right now if I were Biden, because unless I had another stimulus coming out, I would be hiding under a couch. President Biden's economic plan is working in reducing hardships. Read the subject line of an email from the White House press office to reporters Wednesday, touting the results of Schaefer and Cooney's analysis. Benefits from the American Rescue Plan, one of the most consequential pieces of legislation in recent history, had transformational effects, it said. For Democrats, there's a lot riding on whether the public ultimately views Biden's stimulus bill as a success. Congressional midterm elections are less than 18 months away. They're talking about the big 2022 stuff, where there's going to be a lot of changes. The House might not be Democrat, the Senate might not be Republican, or rather Democrat. They might swap. We don't know what's going to happen. And historical trends lean in favor of Republicans retaking the House and the Senate. Democrats are also relying on the $1.9 trillion relief bill to help them sell the American public on Biden's signature domestic investment plan, the $2.3 trillion American Jobs Plan, and the $1.8 trillion American Families Plan, which have a lot of taxation to a lot of people with money which is going to force them to other countries. But we're, as a country, trying to figure this out. Some of the monthly cash transfers introduced in the relief bill also appear in the domestic spending package. For example, the American Families Plan proposes making the expanded child tax credit permanent. A permanent refundable child tax credit could reduce the overall child poverty rate in America by about 40%, the Center for Budget and Policy Priority estimates. Now, look, here's the thing. I think that's pretty much the end of it. Unless they put a bunch of junk after it, which I'm not reading it then, because I don't, it's like SEO stuff, search engine optimization, over and over. That's all that junk is. So the point here is, kids go into poverty, sure, because the parents can't afford the kids. Parents have the kids, can't afford the kids. Kids aren't eating as much as they should. And then basically all these other support systems from the Masons and the Shriners and the local school districts and this have to somehow find ways to provide food to these kids to send home with them because their parents can't afford it. Like I always say, people are like the animal kingdom. You have people that are going to work really hard and they enjoy work and they want the nicer things in life. Even though the economy is broken, even though the entire system is destroyed and against the average person to try and make any money to be anything beyond what they are. That's because of corporate interests controlling the political agendas that are changing essentially what the outcome of the bills turned into law become. With that said, you still have kids suffering as a result of that. And what these big corporations don't realize is that as much as they automate, they still need people to run them. And it's not just going to be managers with everything else automated. But, they'll have to learn that lesson by destroying the American people. That's pretty much what will happen. And then they'll move on to another country and play the same game over and over. That's what mega corporations do. You're seeing all the stuff about antitrust right now. You're seeing all the stuff about bringing all these mega corporations and breaking them up, such as Google, such as Apple, such as any one of them. Amazon, for example, and making them into smaller companies. That needs to happen in order for there to be competition. Who's competing against Amazon? Maybe eBay, but that's it. Nobody else is really competing against Amazon. All the little stores, they're itty bitty tiny because they can't grow, because all the sunlight is being redirected onto Amazon. So what you've got here is a failed economy, a pandemic, and basically a destroyed middle class, and politicians bitching about how they don't want to give money to the American people, who are the people who put them in office. How did politicians get this, and they're not moronic, maybe they are, but how did they get this disconnected? Are they this rich? Are they that so full of money in their banks that it doesn't, you know what I mean? It just doesn't register with them? Are they so bought out at this point that they just do whatever other people tell them to do? How did we get to this point? Do we blame the American people? Do we blame mega corporations? Do we blame essentially people for not caring, sticking their head in the ground and just ignoring it? Who do we blame? Who do we fix? That's why I'm working very diligently on making these videos that show you guys how to make bills. Because believe it or not, a lot of your senators, a lot of your House representatives, they have these bills written for them by other think tanks filled with attorneys who create essentially what they want based upon who pays for them. And who pays for the think tanks? Special interests, mega corporations. So I'm going to show you guys how to write a bill. I'm going to show you guys how to make them push the bill through. I'm going to show you guys how to basically make that law a success. But I want you to think about that. Who do we blame? Who do we blame? All right. My name is Attorney Walter Knott, Disability Resolution PA. If you want to go ahead and if you like this channel, leave a like, leave a subscribe, and also do a subscription by clicking the little thing, and then maybe you'll enhance it to be the ringing of the bell, yada yada. Also, please leave me 5 stars if you like this channel on different websites. I'll catch you a little bit later, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much. Bye bye.